when times are so tough and you're going through pain every single day, you need some kind of escape. And when you can't escape physically, at least for me, I had to escape mentally. And I started to think of best case scenarios. It's like, okay, my life is horrible right now, but if I did got my life back, if I were to snap my fingers and didn't have any more symptoms and didn't have any more of these limitations that I was, staying within, or I had to stay within, what would life look like? Where do I want to go? What do I want to eat? And I think it's during your lowest points in life where you can actually sit down and take the time to really think about what you want your life to look like. Because other than that moment, or other than those moments, plural, because there were many crashes that I had, I didn't really take too much time to sit down and write down and think about what my ideal life would look like and what was really important to me, what really matters, and looking at the bright side of things in what I do have in my life. And it forced me to be grateful for the simplest of things.
I can take on anything now in my life.
I'm now currently living a life in which I never thought I would be able to ever live again.
How's it going, Thrivers? In this video, I'm going to be talking about shifting your perspective on worst case scenarios to best case scenarios. And it's a little bit of a different setup. I'm here sitting in front of my computer, and I want to read out a post that inspired me to make this video. And this post comes from an individual within one of our programs who is making tons of progress and has had a huge mind shift and a perspective shift on not just looking at recovery, but this is also very applicable to life. And I'm going to read out the post here. I'm going to pop it up on the screen right over here. What's the best that could happen? Shout out to Laura for posting this. It was a great golden nugget. What's the best that could happen? What if it all works out? What if your experiences make you forget illness for a while? What if living life can shift your perception? If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, drive. If you can't drive, stand. If you can't stand, sit. If you can't sit, lay. But nobody can cage your mind and your heart. Do what you can, the best you can, and soar. We are all on our way. And I think that is such a powerful statement, especially this statement right here, nobody can cage your mind and your heart. And it reminded me of all those times when I was deep in the trenches of CFS and crashing, and my back was against the wall and I had nowhere else to turn to. And I really had to dig deep and find that place deep within to create almost this inner world, because I couldn't function. I couldn't roll over in bed a lot of the days. I was in a dark room staring at the ceiling for months and months and months. And I had to create this inner world and think of this fantasy land. What could life be like? What was the opposite of everything that was happening to me? Because when times are so tough and you're going through pain every single day, you need some kind of escape. And when you can't escape physically, at least for me, I had to escape mentally. And I started to think of best case scenarios. It's like, okay, my life is horrible right now, but if I did got my life back, if I were to snap my fingers and didn't have any more symptoms and didn't have any more of these limitations that I was, staying within, or I had to stay within, what would life look like? Where do I want to go? What do I want to eat? And I think it's during your lowest points in life where you can actually sit down and take the time to really think about what you want your life to look like. Because other than that moment, or other than those moments, plural, because there were many crashes that I had, I didn't really take too much time to sit down and write down and think about what my ideal life would look like and what was really important to me, right? What really matters, and looking at the bright side of things in what I do have in my life. And it forced me to be grateful for the simplest of things. Because as you know, when you're going through this, when you're very debilitated, just feeling one day with no symptoms, that would be a dream come true. There were days when if I could just sit up and eat my food, that was a good day. Or if I could go to the washroom without feeling like the room was spinning, that was a good day. So in the beginning, I felt crappy all the time. It was rare that I did not feel symptoms. In fact, I don't think I ever not felt symptoms unless it was a few second windows where I was occupied talking to somebody and I forgot that I was sick for just a few seconds. And then as soon as the conversation dies down or my sentence finishes, then immediately the symptoms all come back. So there were moments where the symptoms went away for really tiny periods, but for the most part, I was feeling symptoms 24/7. And so when you're feeling symptoms 24/7, I describe it like levels of crappiness. You always feel like crap regardless, but there's levels of how crappy you feel. Or another analogy is, what vehicle does it feel like you got hit by today? That's what I told myself. It's like, man, today it feels like I got hit by a semi-truck. But yesterday, I felt like I got hit by a tricycle. So there's different levels to this crappiness that you feel. Regardless, I got to the point where even just being able to have one day symptom-free, that would be a dream come true. And so it made me appreciate even the smallest of things. Even if I couldn't do basics of basics, it made me appreciate being able to taste food. It made me appreciate being able to see color, hear sound, and feel wind on my face when I was going outside. Essentially, a lot of times we're primed to think worst case scenarios. And I'm piggybacking off one of the previous videos I just posted, or if you haven't watched that video, then go click that link up here where I talk about worst case scenarios and always having that what if chatter going on internally and always being in that hyper vigilant mode. But what if you're in a mode where you start thinking of best case scenarios? Instead of thinking what could go wrong, what could go right? What are the good things that could come out of this? What happens if you do actually recover from CFS, right? And in the beginning, you just have to have that seed of possibility that it's possible to recover. It doesn't even have to be guaranteed. It doesn't even have to be 100% certain, right? It starts with, wow, I might recover. It's possible to recover. And just that word, possible, that shifts so many things for a lot of people. The perception of something being possible versus being impossible. You don't even have to believe that you will recover in the beginning. You just have to believe that it is possible to recover. And that's when the seed is planted. And that's when you can really start to, let go of these things kind of holding you back in recovery, especially every time you flare up. If you feel like you're back to square one, you're not going to be responding well to symptoms. So first you need to realize that it's possible to recover. And then once you realize that it's possible, then you start implementing certain things and you start to see that the stuff works. Well, now you've seen proof that it works, right? So now you have this confidence in recovery. So it typically happens in 3 stages. The first stage is hoping, right? And you may hope that you can recover one day, but you may not even believe it's possible. So you're holding on, you're crossing your fingers, holding on to blind hope, just praying for something to fall from the sky or for some pill to be invented or some medication that's going to pull you out of this, maybe until you start watching these videos. And when you watch videos like this and you hear recovery stories, then you realize, wow, okay, there's an actual process for recovery. Like I can actually get my life back and it's in my power, it's in my control. So you go from hoping and then you start seeing all these people recovering and then you see it's possible. So now you believe that recovery is possible. Okay, so you go from hoping to believing. And once you believe, then you're able to double down on the things that you're learning online. You're able to implement things a little bit easier just because there's more momentum behind that implementation. There's more energy behind it because belief, it's such a huge thing. Hope and belief, these are like the foundational things because if you don't even believe that you can recover, then it's going to be very difficult for you to cross that finish line and reach thriving health, even if you're doing all the right things. Even if you're eating a perfect diet, even if you're resting 15 hours a day, even if you're doing brain retraining, if you don't believe that you can actually get your life back to a certain degree, you're fighting an uphill battle, right? And we're all about sustainable growth. If you're watching this channel, you probably recovered a little bit in the past, but then you slid backwards, then recovered again and slid backwards. So, there's this cycle that happens where you get better and you get worse. You take 2 steps forward, you take 2 steps back, and it can become very frustrating. So what we want is to have this steady momentum forward on your recovery journey so you're not constantly stuck in this cycle. So hope and belief, these are huge, huge things that are like fuel to the rocket, and it's going to propel you forward in recovery. But once you start believing that you can actually recover and you start seeing the results, you start feeling better due to specific things that you're doing. It's no longer left up to luck or chance. Once you do certain things and it actually results in you feeling better, well, now it goes from believing to knowing. And eventually it just becomes a fact that you will recover. It just becomes an inevitability. And inevitable means unavoidable, right? Recovery is unavoidable. It is certain to happen. So you go from hoping, crossing your fingers, praying that there's a fix out there, that you will get your life back, but you're still unsure. There's still a very small chance of recovery. At least that's where I was. Then it goes from hoping to believing. Now you believe, okay, I think I'm going to get better. That's going to be me. So the vision becomes more and more clear of where you're going to be in the future. And then it goes from believing to just knowing, to knowing that it is an inevitability that you will recover. It's certain that it's going to happen. And something that really helps along the way is thinking of those best case scenarios. And that's in itself a form of brain retraining, because all brain retraining is you're redirecting your emotions and your thoughts from danger, survival mode, fight or flight mode, hypervigilance, to a sense of safety. And let's say you're flaring up and you start thinking, I shouldn't have done that. I'm going backwards now. I screwed up. I just added on 2 more months to my recovery. Instead of going down that route of thinking those things and telling yourself those stories, well, you shift it to, this is a great opportunity to respond well to symptoms and retrain my brain to teach it that I am safe. This is an opportunity to move forward in recovery. This is a springboard. And what's the best case scenario that comes out of this flare up? Well, I respond well to the symptoms, and now I level up in recovery and unlock a whole new level of health. Because every single flare up you have, it is a test to see if you're ready to get to the next level. It is that adaptation phase, right? That adjustment period. So that's why it's called an adjustment period. It's because you're adjusting to the new level of stimulus. But like I said, you can sprinkle this in any point in your recovery journey, but it's thinking the best case scenarios versus worst case scenarios. And even if you don't believe it, even if you don't believe the best case scenario is going to happen, that's what it is. It's a scenario. Because if you can think of worst case scenarios and all the things that could go wrong, it takes a lot of energy for you to do that. So you might as well direct that energy towards thinking of some things that could go right. It doesn't even have to be certain. It doesn't have to go right, but what could go right? Again, opening up yourself to different possibilities can make a massive difference in your perception of things, makes a massive difference in your emotions as well. You're not going to be as emotionally rocked when these curveballs happen in recovery if you are seeing both sides of the equation. Sure, there are things that could go wrong, but there are also things that could go right. We do not live in a one-sided world. So another thing I really liked about this post was, what if your experiences make you forget illness for a while? What if living life can shift your perception? If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, drive. If you can't drive, stand. If you can't stand, sit. If you can't sit, lay. But nobody can cage your mind and your heart. And it's so true, because that is a place that no symptom, no brain fog, no amount of insomnia can touch. You know who you are on the inside. And I think it's these extreme scenarios in life where you get to meet yourself. Maybe for the first time in your life, you get to really meet who you are without the name, without any labels you have. It's like when I was in my darkest times, I knew I was like meeting myself for the first time, because I got everything stripped away from me, my identity, my job, who I was as a person, even my name. I'm like, who am I anymore? Like, this is not Miguel. So you really get in touch with who you are. And that's the thing that symptoms can never, ever touch. It's that place inside. And sometimes during those crashes, you're forced to find that place and forced to get in tune with yourself at the deepest level. So going back to the line of, if you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, drive. If you can't drive, stand. It's so true, because a lot of times we may think that we need to do these big things in order to feel like we're moving forward in recovery or making progress. We need to go on these long walks, or we need to go on these long drives, or cook a meal for 4 people, like a 3-course meal for 4 people, and then we're doing our job right. But as long as you're doing something to move forward in recovery, that's all that matters. Because it doesn't matter how big the task is, as long as you're doing something to move forward in recovery. And there's this famous concept of just failing forward or falling forward. People may see it as a failure. People may see it as, not the prettiest looking approach to move towards a goal, but nonetheless, you are moving closer towards your goal. So if you can't do a big activity, chunk it down. If you can't do that smaller activity, chunk it down even more. But you want to do something and see it as progress, see it as a movement forward on your recovery journey. And again, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and that journey is comprised of thousands and thousands of steps. So there's so many micro things you do in recovery to move you forward, but a lot of it comes down to the way you think and your perception of things and how you respond to symptoms and adversity in your life, right? Your life has thrown you the biggest curveball it can throw you. No one can really prepare you for CFS. No amount of training, no amount of books you've read, no amount of theories can prepare you for something like this. And sure, these videos may help, but that's throwing you a manual when you're stuck in the water and you don't know how to swim. It's like someone threw you a manual that gave you a breakdown of how to swim. You still need to do the work. You need to put in the effort in order to get better. So a lot of it does come down to your perceptions of things and your ability to control your emotions, or at least manage them to a certain degree. And I'm not saying that this is all in your head. I'm not saying you can just think more positive and all of a sudden you get your life back and you can walk again. It's not how this works, right? There is an actual scientific process where thinking better and thinking more logically and understanding what's going on actually wakes up the logic centers in your brain. So it brings you out of that emotional state, out of that fight or flight, amygdala, hypervigilant survival mode. So that's just something I wanted you to take away from this video. I was really inspired by this post. Shout out to Laura. My invitation for you, an action item to take away from this video, is whenever you start thinking worst case scenarios, instead, counter it with what's the best case scenario? What if I go into that mall and I don't crash? What if I drive that car and I don't flare up like crazy afterwards? What if I spend time with my family and go to that dinner that they want to go to and I'm not in bed for the next 3 days, right? Obviously you have to be smart about this. Don't do something drastically outside of your comfort zone. Like if you're housebound, obviously don't go for a run thinking that the best case scenario is you're not going to feel anything. But in the basic things that you're doing, in the basic things in life, in the basic worries that you have, the things that are repetitive coming up over and over again, think of best case scenarios. Because on a long enough time frame, if you implement these things that I teach on the channel, these principles, and follow the system that works for people all around the world, and if you run the system, you are likely to get the results that other people have gotten as well. As long as you've ruled out all other health issues with tests and scans and you've seen doctors, those best case scenarios eventually on a long enough time frame will come to life and you will surpass those best case scenarios. I can confidently say that there were things I thought about during recovery that I thought would be a dream come true, and they would be nearly impossible to achieve. At least at the time, it was so far out of reach, it was impossible. I've accomplished most of those things in just a few years after it. And now I'm at a place where I'm more anti-fragile than I ever was before. And I have surpassed most of those dreams I had when I was sick. I can run, I can work out, I've traveled a ton, I can see my friends again. I'm able to have a bigger impact all around the world. So the visions I had, the best case scenarios I had at the time when I was in the hospital and sick and bedridden, those best case scenarios are now just a reality for me. So never give up, never lose hope. And if you are finding that you're automatically thinking of worst case scenarios, just remember to balance it out with best case scenarios. So if you did want some extra help in your recovery journey, if you wanted some hand holding and for us to come in and build a personalized plan for you to help you navigate through the flare-ups and how much activity to do and what specifically you should be doing in order to get to that next level, especially if you've been stuck for a while, then that's exactly what we help people with. You can apply to work with us inside of one of our programs where we can give you that support you need, and you're getting it from people who have been in your shoes and understand it and have actually gotten to the other side of CFS, long COVID, fibromyalgia, all of these different hypersensitive nervous system issues. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you got a lot of value out of it. Always remember that you are a thriver and you are just one mind shift away from living a life with thriving health. See you in the next video.
Say that CFS recovery is